Have I come to this planet to pay bills? Leaders are not born, they are made.
So I want to meet you for half an hour. How much will you charge? Everyone will be buying and selling time.
विश्व में केवल 10% ऐसे लोग हैं जो गोल सेट करते हैं.
The manager converted into a leader and you said, we all know, let's do it.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are you all today? I am so excited to be back on the BSB Live. And before I start, my sincere apologies for the little glitch. I am in Bali and I think LinkedIn does not accept the timing that is on my computer as compared to the one I had set. So that was the glitch with which LinkedIn canceled the event, which was not when it was not screened at 5 p.m. in Bali. We are back again after 6-7 minutes, so sorry for that little disturbance in between. Today, I have got with me a very special guest. When I say very special, it is because when I met him personally in Singapore and we spent 3 days together, and he set up a masterclass on shooting a reel, and he talked about branding in particular and shooting a reel for a speaker. It was so well done. It was so beautiful that I was absolutely excited. That very moment I told him, will you come on a live with me? And he said yes. And I'm soon going to be inviting him to our PSAI to do a masterclass on his expertise. So today we have with us Nathan Shooter. And let me tell you something about him. Best known as the Make Ideas Matter guy, Nathan is a brand strategist, a designer, a filmmaker, and an international speaker. He's obsessed with ideas because ideas change people and people change the world. That's what he says. And so true. He's on a mission to equip leaders to master the art of making ideas matter, powerfully conveyed to their teams, to their clients, to their audiences that they impact. He works with leaders and businesses to shift their communication into peak performance using the Make Ideas Matter framework. He has been an Adobe Award judge, is a Colored Brain Psychology certified facilitator, and a Lego Serious Play certified. Nathan founded the startup Viscano Coffee, Australia's only luxury coffee brand solely dedicated to unifying the worlds of whiskey and coffee. While doing all the above, he can be seen hitting the streets and stage wearing signature sneakers from his ever-expanding global connection. And I've seen him doing that, buying his sneakers in Singapore just a day before he came on the workshop. So very, very warm welcome to you, Nathan. My viewers are just waiting to listen to you, and so am I. So welcome to Bali, and welcome to a show for my audience in India generally.
Thanks very much for having me, Sushil. And it was so wonderful to have met you in real life in the beautiful country that is Singapore. And I hope you're having a good time in Bali. It's certainly one of the places that's very dear to my heart as well. So really awesome to be here with your audience as well. So let's get into some really awesome insights together. Thanks for having me.
I have to start with one thing that is, coming in my mind again and again, make ideas matter. So I just want you to tell me a little background about your journey. How did you start on this journey? And what made you come? What was the thing that ignited this idea in your mind about make ideas matter?
Yeah, that's a great question. And a lot of people ask me that because my background for the last 20 years has been in branding and marketing and film. And over those 20 years, I've really always started with a passion for ideas, But when I had a really critical health incident, one that you would have heard me share about with everyone in Singapore, I realized that delivering all of those creative services like the branding and marketing and films and all those kinds of things wasn't really going to be able to have that exponential impact that I really desired. So when I was lying in one of those hospital beds, I realized, Cecile, that really it's the ideas itself that are going to help people unlock audiences' potentials. So I need to focus on that. And so as a result, I've made that shift from, helping people by delivering creative services to helping people deliver ideas that actually change people, as we said, because people change the world. So it was actually through a health crisis where I realized, you know what, this is not enough. I need to go higher and help people on the idea level to really change the world.
Very good. So nice. So, yes, that's so true. So, I really, found that everything starts with the thought. I call this the thought factory because everything we do begins with a thought. And the thoughts are not all original. Thoughts are all that come from somewhere with some background. Something triggers them. Either you hear of them, imagine them, see them, and whatever. And so I want to know that once you have done that, you thought of that, then how did your journey proceed as a brand strategist, and how did you integrate this mantra of ideas that matter with your branding strategy?
Yeah, well, really, the way that this came about was almost parallel with how the idea generation process actually works. So, in our brains, obviously the neuroscientists will be able to tell you in more expert terms chemically how this happens. But ideas, when they're formed, when they're pre-formed, they're actually a collection of very disparate and very different ideas. So the little moments or memories or little bits of data, which are quite scattered and very disparate, meaning very different in nature. And then when we seek meaning, all the patterns of those start to emerge and they start to connect and they start to create a network. And so for me, when I was in conversations with CEOs or people who were working on films or with different marketing campaigns, it was almost like the idea creation process, little flickers of things here and there. And then over the years, I'm like, hang on, there is a network or an idea forming. And so what I realized was that one of the biggest things, one of the biggest frustrations that leaders had, which are the people in your audience, they're leaders in their own sphere of influence, is that they lacked the language to communicate their vision in creative terms. So what they had was the ideas, but they didn't necessarily have a framework to explain it, to share their vision. So for me, very much like the science of how we develop ideas, it actually came together rather than it being like a bolt of lightning from heaven. It actually was a slow creep. It was a collection of different things that networked together to create an aha moment, as people say. So it was actually a slow creep of very different ideas creating network into one moment of like, you know what, above all else, ideas is what matters most.
Absolutely. And I just love this phrase, the when you said ideas change people and people change the world. I really resonate with that. But what is very curious in my mind, and I'm very eager to know, I can't wait any longer, that you just again mentioned framework. And what is this framework? Because I agree with you that some of these things are known, people talk about them, but we are not able to put them into an organized thought process or a framework. So let's hear something about what is this framework and how do you really go about it.
That's a really good point. People often have what we would see in others maybe as a chaotic approach, or we might see others with a very highly organized approach to sharing their ideas. So, what I decided to do was create a 6 point framework that helped people to be able to put their ideas where it kind of goes and then create impact once they got organized. So, there's 6 things, right? So, the first one, as you might be kind of thinking, it's fairly predictable start, Number one is to uncover and unleash powerful ideas, right? And that really talks about really doing an audit of all the things, as in all the passions, vision, mission, values, and your goals and priority, doing a thought factory audit, as you might put it, to uncover all the data and then unleash the potential of those. But first, you've got to capture the ideas. And then the second part of the framework is sculpting unforgettable solution stories. So one of the things that, from your military background is with a mission, I would appreciate there's a problem that you have to go and solve. They give you a process and then you do it. But I'm sure that you would have learned from hearing others' stories of when it's worked and when it hasn't worked. So the second module is sculpting unforgettable solution stories. So when people share their tales of transformation, it really helps us to realize that we too can change. So that's very, very powerful when you want to help your ideas to actually matter to someone. Give them a tale of transformation. And
So all
then
these,
the third, sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just wanting to tell the viewers that this is high time that you write down the 6 ideas if you really want to catch his framework, because I always feel that just listening is not learning, doing is learning. So might as well note them down. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Getting involved and writing it down helps your brain to retain it. So on to the third module, that is build a blockbuster brand. And
Sorry,
some people find this a little bit,
Come
that
again.
is to build a blockbuster brand. So building a blockbuster brand is more than just a visual identity. So some people think brand equals visual assets, but that's not just the case, right? It's a good start, but really when you're thinking about how to build a blockbuster brand, it's giving the world a way to learn what you're like. It's a who you are way of expressing yourself, right? So in my session in Singapore, you might have recalled when I explained the difference between branding being a who we are item and marketing being a this is what we do item. So when you build a blockbuster brand, think about a who we are item for you. What does that look like? So we can go into that a bit later if you like. And then once we move past module 3, is the next one is forge unbreakable connections. So if you're wanting to share your vision or your mission or your culture and ideas, whether it be with your team or with your audiences, you need to actually create a bond, right? So you need to create unbreakable connections. So that's about how you can create a sense of belonging, and you do that by developing trust. And there's different ways of approaching trust. I believe these days it has to be rapid building of trust. We don't have the luxury of time these days and for decades to go by before we trust someone. So I believe there's things we can do to do that. And then the fifth one is boost mental availability. So this might sound a little bit technical, Sushil, but what that just means is being the logical choice, becoming the natural choice. So that means that if you have a need in your life that's come up, either it could be a practical need or a stage of life need, you will think of a brand and that then becomes a natural choice for you to choose that brand. So my heart and my passion is to help leaders who lead in whatever subject matter or whatever solution they have for the world, for them to be the natural choice for people in their audience to follow, to listen to. And then the very last one is engineer impactful action. It's all well and good having amazing ideas. It's all well and good to be able to feel inspired, but there has to be a result, right? We want to actually see people do something with it. And part of this section of the framework is getting your ideas into a process, helping people to actually have an ascension model or a way of changing. And then they can actually become this person that you've helped promise to help them become, right? We are helping them on that journey. So those are the big 6 ideas on the Make It Matter framework.
What are the last one? Engineering impactful?
Yeah, so the last one, number 6, is engineer impactful action.
Okay.
So that's really how do we construct it?
To everyone so that you can see them. Yeah.
Sure. And perhaps if the internet connection on your end is not so good, feel free to ask me to repeat anything.
Yeah. Okay. So I put them all, and we'll put them in the comments also, so that you can all remember them. Okay. So that was beautiful. Now,
Great.
once we know the framework, uh, I also want to go a little ahead to ask you that why is it so important, so vital, so critical for leaders to embody the concept of this making ideas matter? Because I in my leadership training also would like to get a little reinforced on how does making ideas matter, and equip a leader to get better things, to get better output from his teams.
Yeah. And I think we're so entrenched in operations, right? So we're so entrenched in how to deliver as a great leader, how to deliver outcomes as a great leader. But sometimes that means that we are working with projects that aren't initiated by us, right? So these are ideas that haven't originated from us, but are passed down from upstairs, and then we have to facilitate that. So what happens is that sense of ownership, that little ownership piece sometimes gets overlooked. So for me, I feel like this radical ownership portion is super important for leadership. So helping people to realize that if it matters to us first, then we truly have the ability to then make it matter to them, make it matter to those in our sphere of influence. So I think it's really important that we move like from this domain of being instructional leaders who are getting a project done because this is the way it's been done, to being leaders who are leading change
Okay.
with the right language. And so there's a lot to lose really if you have a situation where you, for example, like this is a very typical situation that I have. You have leaders who are leading massive organizations, but sometimes don't, I guess, feel like they can transmit the culture and the values in a really effective or clear and simple way. That organization can have cultural drift, they can have brand drift. And so, because the values or the mission perhaps of the company doesn't truly matter to them and really intrinsically tie in with who they are, staff can detect it. Your culture is a good temperature read of what the staff are detecting in you as a leader. And so that's why I believe that if you truly, if an idea matters to you, you don't have to become fanatical and strange about it, but you have to really buy into it. And then when your staff and your team see that, then they're going to give that to their customers in an amazing experience. And you will see, I guarantee it, you'll see sales increase, revenue increase, engagement boosted, because people actually buy into the idea of what it is that you as a leader are casting for everyone.
Okay, that's very nice. And Nathan, what happens if, on the contrary, the leader is not able to do it? Then what's the risk? What are they losing if they don't do it?
Yeah, if a leader is unable to do it, what happens is you create a fragmented brand and your results will diminish. So what I mean by that is if you are not articulating an idea that matters in a way that is well structured, simple, and very clear that these are high stakes ideas, then people, for example, in your marketing department or your sales, or even if you're a smaller business like a solopreneur, all of the things that you do, the way you write your marketing copy, the way you speak on stage, or the way you compose your social media posts, it's going to be fragmented because you don't have this true north. You don't have this real sense of ultimate clarity that is your, I guess, guiding star for everything. So then your messaging and everything becomes very, very fragmented. So what happens is, as a result of that, you get a loss of opportunity. I know that I've seen tremendous, like amazing people miss out on world-class experiences because their brand or their message, or in this case, their ideas, it was too confusing. They were talking about multiple ideas in a very kind of fractured manner. But when they simplified their message and went back and revisited point one of this module, which was really about how to unearth and unleash that true, simple idea that changed their life, then you get to see the opportunities be more attractive for others to them because they have ultimate clarity. So yeah, it's very financial and very opportunity costs that could occur if you really don't simplify your message and stay on your true north.
Absolutely. I think that's a very important point. And if the message is not clear, and I always feel in leadership, a lot of things happen about clarity, whether as an
Mm.
organization or as an individual. If you have too many things muddled up, and I'll share this with you, Nathan, a very interesting thing that I heard many definitions of clarity, and a lot of people say, "What is clarity?" I got to understand it when I wanted to buy a new handset. And one of the criteria I had in my mind was that it must have a good camera because we know do so much work with our phone on the with the camera. So I asked my son, who's a professional photographer, and he suggested this mobile which I bought. And then one day I told him, I said, when you take a picture with the same handset, it's very good, but when I do it, it's not as clear. So he says, Dad, when did you last clean the lens? I said, oh, I've never done it. He said, that's why your pictures are not clear because there's so much of dust on the lens. And it occurred to me, isn't it same when we are talking about clarity, that there is so much of haze, there's so much of dust in our mind, there is so much of ambiguity, there is so much of uh, clutter that you don't get to see the real thing. So what I learned was that just get rid of all the unwanted stuff, the less priority stuff, and you'll automatically get clarity. Just like a sculptor, he scrapes off all the unwanted wood and he gets the statue beneath. That he had a clear vision of what the statue was. He knew what was the unwanted wood which he scraped off to get that image. I think leaders need to do that. And I learned from one of my coaches. He said, 1 inch wide and 1 mile deep. 1 inch wide is when you are getting rid of a lot of other ideas and coming to focus one or two ideas. And then 1 mile deep is that you then give total concentration to those one or two ideas so that you are absolutely focused onto that. And I found this to be very good. So when you talked of people don't have clarity, and I think I've seen it very often, leaders at all levels, they are firefighting, they meet, they try to do things like jobs every day without putting their mind into the consequences, the different contingencies that may come up. So they are not always alive, and this can only happen if you have clarity. Clarity is, I think, the basic, fundamental pillar on which everything stands. So I think that was very nice. Now, in your experience, Nathan, tell me how important is branding in today's competitive business landscape and what distinguishes exceptional branding from the rest as compared to what was happening a few years ago?
Yeah, and I think it doesn't matter, what era we look at in history, branding has always been important. But I know that we keep saying it, but even more so, even more than ever, branding matters because at the moment, pace of recognition is currency. So we need to be trusted, like I said before, by people sooner rather than later. And we need to build brands that are front loaded. So brands that people can learn us more rapidly. So that means, like we said before, we've got to be clear. But one of the things that we tend to stress about, so some of us on this call might feel this same anxiety, is that when we build a brand, people get stressed about uniqueness. They get really quite anxious about, will I be unique enough? Will I be different enough? Am I going to be kind of the unicorn enough that people will want to participate with and to follow online? Well, I'm here to encourage you to say that actually the science shows that differentiation and distinction actually trumps uniqueness. And so, what I mean by that is with branding, it's so important that you don't go and try to pursue novelty when really you're meant to be chasing distinctiveness. So that just means doing the simple things in a way that is distinctive to you rather than inventing something weird and delaying producing a brand because you're waiting for this unusual flash of brilliance to be that unicorn in the room, right? So now more than ever, Sushil, we need to help people to rapidly understand our brand by being distinctive. And that can just be very simple things, but that means doing it repetitively. And in the framework, I talk about boosting mental availability, and that's just a fancy way of saying staying top of mind. So, and there's a couple of ways of doing that. Making sure that we're contextually relevant is a really big one. Making sure that we're entering the life of people who are in our world at the right time, and really making sure that we're doing the visually distinct things. Like, for example, people will often come up to me at conferences. Like I spoke at a real estate conference in Melbourne recently, and they're like, "Oh, I saw your sneakers online," right? So when I shared on stage, when I was speaking on stage, people were taking photos of my shoes, right? Such a simple thing. It's not a unicorn idea. It's a distinctive thing to me, right? So after the conference, I found those photos of my shoes as well as my presentation. So it's a simple thing, but it's quick, right? It's really, really rapidly understood. And that makes it easy to digest in person and online. So Sushil, I think that would be it. Rapid clarity and also distinctiveness versus searching for uniqueness.
That was brilliant. That was brilliant, Nathan. I think very well explained. And can we go on further to highlight a few key principles or strategies from the world of branding that individuals and businesses can apply to stand out in their respective fields? Some
Yeah, sure.
strategies, some key principles where it's both organization and individually as a leader. How do you stand out?
Okay, well, there's multiple ways that you can do this. So let's just talk, I guess, on a practical practical perspective on this for a moment. So one of the things that happens with deploying brands is it becomes very complicated. There becomes a lot of moving parts, or people create 18-page PDFs on how to deploy or use the brand, and then how to use it correctly, right? So the first thing what people can do from a business level and a personal level is to create cheat sheets, to really create go-to items or scripts or language palettes, which are so simple, it's literally hard or almost impossible to get wrong. So just by way of example, I was helping one company kind of do a little bit of a digital transformation with their online presence and also for their building itself, because they have a bricks and mortar presence as well. So I just started with the low-lying fruit, which was simply the words their staff use. So I said, hey, how about we come up with a list of the top 5 words that you feel embody your brand, and then give it to the staff on a little business card. So simple. So there's 5 key words that now all the staff either know or are triggered to remember that they can use in custom interactions, which really help their customers and potential customers know what their brand is, to understand their values, the mission they're on, and the vision for the world that that business wants to create. So it became really simple, right? So that was literally a little card with 5 words on it. And then if you were to do that same thing on a personal level for personal branding, there's 2 kinds of personal brands. The first is when you are a person who is, say, a public figure or an influencer or somebody who's a solopreneur. So that kind of you can copy and paste the business advice. But then what I see, Shil, is people who are personal brands within someone else's organization, and they sometimes feel like maybe this advice is really different for them, but it's actually not. So people have positioned themselves for amazing opportunities like promotions or job transfers into different parts of the world with the same company because they've built very deliberately a personal brand. So they too have used particular words in their conversations, kind of different phrases which demonstrate the kind of person they are in meetings. and also show the leadership that they've managed to work out a way to marry their company brand with their personal brand. And that's a real superpower. So I know people who have done really well for themselves by being consistent and building a personal brand as the go-to person in their company for a particular issue or for a particular subject, right? So that requires repetition. So keep it really simple, create cheat sheets, and then build repetition. I think one of my fears, and I'm sure some of you on this call would share this same fear, is that we kind of are scared about being out there too often and saying the same thing too many times. And which is good because none of us want to flood the market and spam people, right? But really what we forget is that there's so many different ways that people can access us now, which is on social platforms or in different conferences around the world, etc., that we sometimes assume that they're hearing everything we're putting out there, or that they're seeing and reading every single piece of content that we're putting out there. So to you, it feels repetitive, but to them, it's not. It could, in fact, be the first time. So one of the big keys of brand is really simple: repetition, consistency, and congruence of that message. It's not rocket science, but we tend to forget that, and we tend to kind of focus on the trickery of building brands with all these highfalutin logos and color palettes and color psychology, which we can talk about if you want to as well. But actually, it comes down to checklists, repetition, and really just being congruent where you turn up on every platform.
Very good. And that also brings me to another question which is hopping up in my mind. You know, today we talk a lot about storytelling and we feel that storytelling is very important. Now, how do you think a leader can use storytelling in his brand to build his brand and also not only build but also uh, sort of disseminate it down in the same way that people get inspired by that? So, how does storytelling fit into branding?
Yeah, storytelling is something that we hear a lot of, right? And, there's an amazing resource that I would encourage you all to read. It's a very, very thick book, be warned. It's called Seven Basic Plots by Christopher Booker. And he is an amazing thinker and researcher. And he has basically distilled every story plot he suggests rather that every single story plot can be distilled into seven big storylines. And so, the research has proven correct on that. But what that tells us is that humans are craving meaning and that they're meaning makers. So, what that means for us is that if you are trying to help your idea matter to someone else, then you need a vehicle, and a story is the perfect vehicle for you. So when you want to create change and you want to use your idea to do it, you need to do two things when it comes to storytelling. I'll give you a bit of a storytelling framework in a second, but to preface it, I guess what I want to help you to, appreciate first, those joining us on this call, is to be exceptional, but also relatable. So what that means is you are still needing to position yourself as the leader, okay? So someone who's in authority, someone who's you have designated authority, okay, in that leadership role. So you are kind of exceptional, if you like, in that sense. But then we have to remember, conversely, we need to be relatable. We need to be people who, if you hear this key phrase, are just like them. So we need to be exceptional and relatable at the same time, because then we get people to emotionally buy into us and our ideas. So once we realize that we've got to lead them but be like them, here's the three things that you should include in your story. So there's plenty of different storytelling frameworks out there. I like this one because it's just really succinct. It's the person, the pain, and the promise. Really simple. There are other ones which go into more detail, but essentially, if you are sharing a story, like I do this particularly with younger people that I'm mentoring. So people, the pain, the promise. So the people is when I'm telling a story or sharing something, I'll mention how it worked in my life or in my friend's life or in my family's life, right? So then that creates a little bit of ownership for me and they are invited into the story a bit. They know who the people are, the characters are in the story. Then the next thing is the pain, right? There's no movie on earth that doesn't have a problem in it, right? So the latest Mission Impossible movie with Tom Cruise, I won't give any spoilers, but the problem is this rogue artificial intelligence algorithm, right? It's going to ruin the earth. That's a problem. But it's also the reason why the characters have a job to do and while we get entertained on the way. So what is the pain? What is the problem? What is the friction that you were looking to solve or meet that need? So when I'm chatting with people, I will help them to realize what it is that either they're experiencing as a problem is something that I too have experienced. Then the third station we move to is the promise. And that is, what is the picture of the solution that we could envisage for them? And have we ourselves experienced that? So at the top of this call, like you asked me how I kind of arrived at this whole Make Ideas Matter framework, and it was because something very practical, right? A health crisis. So for me, I've helped leaders to get through things because I've been there. So I've come up with systems as a result of having gone through a pain myself, right? So show them how stories and tales of transformation have worked with you or with someone else, and invite them to see themselves in those person's shoes. So in marketing, we call that interpolation. That's helping people to imagine themselves using your product or service, or in this case, helping them to imagine them living in the promise or the solution of the story that your service or product fulfills the need of. So the person, the promise, the person, the pain rather, and then the promise. Those three elements, while being
Okay.
exceptional
That's
and
because
relatable at
my
the same time.
okay. Person, pain, and
Yeah.
promise.
So the person, pain, and promise. That's right.
Pain and promise. Oh, just 1 minute. Okay. Yeah. So, just
And you
one
can
second.
also add to, if you like, the
Mhm.
being exceptional and being relatable at the same time, which is a tall order, right? It's actually easier said than done. But we love leaders who are just like us. And I said in a client meeting last week, actually, and it made them laugh. For me, I don't trust people who don't walk with a limp. And what I mean by that is, I don't trust people who have got it really polished and all together all the time. So I think anyone worth following has had some damage done to them. They probably are a phenomenal achiever, but they walk with a slight limp. And I think, man, that's so exceptional, but it's also absolutely relatable. So it's not just pie in the sky. It's work in the dirt. It's both of those different things.
Absolutely. Now tell me, Nathan, nothing in branding can be complete, I feel, if we don't talk anything about social media. Because
Hmm.
with the changing algorithms, with the changing trends, with the things like, developments like Elon Musk going and buying Twitter and things changing,
Mm, mm.
and overnight, we all know how the trends and algorithms keep changing of all the platforms. How would you advise people to or leaders to be careful about optimizing the use of social media?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think change is the norm, so we should expect it. Firstly, which is not a complete direct answer to your question. Firstly, I would try and own whatever you can, because those formulas and algorithms change so often. I would really encourage us all to own whatever assets where possible as often as possible. So what I mean by that is little simple things like make sure you own your branded domain names for your websites, or that you have amazing, systems perhaps for your learning management systems if you are people who have an online course, right? So reducing your dependency on social platforms is my first and most important advice, because we've seen, when there was the change with the Facebook algorithms for getting page views from being free and totally organic to when it was being paid, I saw crazy amounts of people lose out on audiences who already had tens of thousands of people simply because of that shift. But some of them have thrived and they continue to grow because they owned phenomenal websites or online schools, and all roads still led to that. So I would, to be able to deploy this in a practical sense, I would encourage people to change the way of thinking and seeing their website as Grand Central Station, and then seeing everything else as the stations that lead out from that central station. So that's I guess a bit of a shift on ownership because we don't know what could change. From a brand perspective, I think that we have to lean into the contextual relevance. So the other day I was speaking with a group of people about context marketing, right? So there's two ways of doing this, either at a point of time in people's life or at a location, which could be either a platform or like a geographical location. So I personally are telling people to opt out of platforms that don't reach the people at the point in their lives or at the place in their lives where your product can shine or your message can shine. So that might mean, say, for example, say some real estate agents, they have a niche where their brand has built an audience that don't relate to people on TikTok, right? But what I would say is perhaps do a welcome mat approach to TikTok. Put some content there and say, hey, welcome. The real action happens over in Facebook, or the real action happens over in Instagram. So that way you still turn up in a Google search for, that you return as Google search result for a TikTok thing, but then you're helping customers understand that the real action happens somewhere else. So that's one thing. The other thing that I would do is put a focus on building desire, not just trying to sell. And so what I mean by that is, I guess, doing another shift, which is constantly rather trying to sell, trying to convert, trying to do call to actions, but do a focus on just building desire. So piquing people's attention, generating interest, but showing desire, getting people to develop a desire for your product. I think that's a big one. And that comes down to the way we language our content. So that's a really interesting one because people have choice, but building desire is the first way that we can help them get into that customer journey to eventually buy, right? So that's the inception point. That's the idea stage from which everything else happens. So really focus on that. I'm working with a client on a very large project, and their heads couldn't quite compute why I was talking about building desire rather than just making call to actions everywhere. But we find that there's more referral traffic to people's friends and families because we're showing here's a desire, here's a way of seeing and being that maybe you're part of. So that's a bit of a tone of voice shift in the brand. And the other thing that I would do is I would, from a brand perspective, really consider your colors. So more than ever, color psychology has never mattered more immediately. And I know that the elements of your brand are many, right? So you've got your logo, slogan, you've got fonts, colors, you have photography and videos and visual treatments on your websites and so forth, uniforms, even the way you dress, right? So one of the big things that I'm finding is color psychology. Because it's so quick to understand, we need to get on it as a task for ourselves. So as our brand colors, is it telling people the right things about who we are? Because as we know, everything says something about something else. So I would just do a check on your colors. What do they mean? And do you need to make a change as a result? So they're the kind of the most obvious things. Then there's things that everyone knows, like making sure your logos are used correctly, making sure that you're using those keywords so that you can help drive, all of those traffic sources back to your website as well.
Okay, that was brilliant. I can I add something to this, and that is, in military leadership, where we don't talk about branding and all because we are not into a profit-making business. But there's something which is happening simultaneously which brings in two things. You talked about desire, and I'll say something closely related, and that is serving. If anyone is getting into business with the idea of serving and always and consistently trying to find out what can he or she do to be able to get to people's pain points more and keep exhibiting very clearly or displaying that you are looking at their interests and you are there to serve them and not just to make a profit. Making a profit is subsidiary or is secondary to solving their problem or serving them. That's one. And the second thing is that in military leadership, one thing which really stands out as against corporate leadership is the human connection. And I think even in branding, if the human connection with the customer is always focused on, that can bring about a remarkable difference in the way you are perceived by people. And that is what branding is. How are you perceived by people? So, what
Yeah,
would you
I think
say?
that's really important. Biggest thing that I would say to that is brand belonging. We need to brand belonging. So the name of my business is Brandhood Media, and that literally means branding neighborhoods or branding ideas that people can belong to. Because one thing I realized a few years ago is people want to belong to something, but they want it to be, I guess, surrounded by people who are just like them. So think of it, we had the World Cup here in Australia, and so there was an arena full of, 80,000 people. They have gathered around one single idea. So what we've done, and you've done probably, is you've gathered around a smaller thing, maybe a campfire with your friends and family. The point is you've gathered around one single idea, and that's powerful because it's a shared experience. So for me, I put a massive, massive focus on building and branding belonging. How does your brand make me belong or feel like I'm part of something greater? So for me, when the ideas framework came up for me, I'm like, this is just a really beautiful way to explain this desire I already had. It's like building belonging. So I help my clients to do the brandhood media approach is how can you make your brand a neighborhood? It's a neighborhood of people who are all surrounding and focus on one idea. So, in terms of how you can, as a brand, really forge a sense of belonging, you can do it in three ways. You can do it by demonstrating that you actually care, which Sushil, you said very eloquently before, being obvious that you exist in service of others. You actually care about building mutual value, serving, we're here, we're going to be here tomorrow, we're here to serve you, right? To care. The next one is character. So, as a brand character, are you consistent? Are you always going to be showing up the same way? Can people learn you? So, if you go to a birthday party, people will say a few words as a speech, but they'll always comment on your character, usually because of time elapsed. They've learnt you. You've become predictable in a certain way, and they've learnt your character, right? So, what is your brand character? And the third one is that competency piece, which is we can be trusted to actually help you with the thing that you need when you need it. So we're the obvious and natural choice for when you're ready, which is why I talk about building desire, right? So if you show the people that you are genuinely there to serve and that you want to help create mutual value, but you really are there for them, people put down their guard and they can see that your brand is walking alongside them rather than in front of them. And then character, over time, you develop that bond, and then competency, showing that, hey, we're good for it. When you're ready to go, our brand has always been here with you as you've learned us over time. So we want to work with you when you're ready. So that's how you build trust, but ultimately belonging is the chief cornerstone to building a brand that really sticks.
Thank you so much, Nathan. I think these were absolutely valuable insights and very, very good perspectives. At least I have heard many of them for the first time, which adds to your normal belief of what leaders can do to brand their uh, companies, their organizations, as also themselves. So, thank you very much for this insightful conversation. And if we have any questions from the audience, I know that because of this little confusion about that we have to change the we had to redo or recreate an event. So the previous event was not the one which was advertised or known to people, did not happen. So the number of people I see are very few, but I'm sure that many of you will watch it later. And therefore, first, of course, I'm opening questions to people who are here. But even after that, you are most welcome. Okay, so Kerry has now come on Facebook, and earlier I was getting all her comments on private chat. It was not coming anywhere where I thought it should come. Okay, so there she is now. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to some questions from you, and those who come around with questions later, uh, we will still answer them. Both Nathan and I will make sure that we answer your questions. So do, if you're watching the recording later, do mention it there. Yeah, thank you. So yes, any questions? Until then, I also want to tell you that uh, we are doing some leadership mentoring programs, and they are absolutely aimed for mid-career professionals who are finding themselves challenged for leadership, who find that they're they're a little stuck in their career, or the career is not moving, or the career path is not going as well as they thought it should go. Then if you want to attend one of these programs, just get in touch with us for details, and we look forward to giving you value in enhancing your leadership qualities so that you are more effective. So any questions? We're still looking for questions.
One of the questions that I get, Sushil, is do I have what it takes? And that probably sounds like an existential question, but it's very real, and it's a question that I find I'm receiving a lot. And my response is usually this: you were born to brand. And that advice is basically signifying to people that the ideas that you have are worthy of being shared. So it doesn't need to be like you were saying before about original thought. So we don't have to be so caught up in is my idea perfect and unique and everything like that. But I just simply believe that you as a leader on this video call, you were born to brand. You were born to share your ideas, and so that I think you should feel confident about sharing those ideas when you have it clear and when you have a plan. The world is ready for you to share those moments with them.
Thank you. And here we have another question on the screen from Koshika. And after thanking you, she says, how do we connect new age talent to our career opportunities, considering their attention span is comparatively smaller?
Amazing question, and thank you for that, because this is a great fit for some of the, I guess, some of the different movements of populations and of employees that we're seeing in the market. So during the COVID-19 period, for example, in real estate, we saw something huge, like a 19% resignation of property managers. That's massive. That's almost 20% of Australia's property managers leave the industry. And then what we've also seen is people leave workplaces because they don't either know the vision of the company or they don't align with it. So some of the exciting work that I've been able to be part of is helping to reduce churn, that is, help people to retain employees longer who are younger, because they are getting clear about the mission they're on, and that resonates with those younger people. So then because it resonates, they feel connected and they feel like their contribution to the company actually matters. So then they hang around. they actually stay in the business longer. And there's plenty of research around that. So that tells you one psychology piece, right? And then in terms of actually attracting that talent from a recruitment marketing perspective, I would put a massive emphasis on employer branding. So by that, I mean, create a video. I would probably do that as your first thing, and create a video that's really driven by the employees explaining what an amazing place it is to work and how they feel as a result. Just make it a really short video. Don't talk about all of the products and services necessarily that you do, because you want to sell an idea. And younger people, I mean, when I say younger, I mean people who are not in my generation. I'm almost 40, but people are moving jobs quickly, but they'll stay if they know what the mission is that the company's on, and if they align with it, they're going to stay. So if you want to attract those people, create a really short video that explains that. Hopefully that answers that question.
Thank you, Kaushika. I hope you got your answer, and please do say in the comments if you got it. Where are the other comments? Yeah, here. Yeah, Kaushika, we're looking forward to your comment to say whether you got the answer or not. And I think we'll now end the show here. Thank you once again. And any more questions, please put them in your comments and we'll answer them. And look forward to seeing you again on the next live, which will happen. Yeah, so Kaushika has confirmed that she has got the answer. So thank you, Kaushika, for coming. I think I've seen you for the second time, and I'm very happy that you're coming here. We are doing this show every alternate Wednesday. So looking forward to seeing you next time with another star performer in any field that gets connected to leadership, and that is what we are going to be doing. So thank you very much to everyone for coming and watching this. You invested your time. We are very grateful for that, and I hope you got your returns. Good night.